Political Monitoring Service Polymonitor, and Kate Andrews from the Institute of Economic Affairs have been listening very closely to Tim Farron's speech and join me now. Kate, centrepiece, front and centre, is this issue of Brexit and Tim Farron's determination, and we've known this before the general election, of course, was called to avoid a hard Brexit, but to put that front and centre in the campaign.
It's interesting, we were actually saying in the Green Room that the Lib Dems have a unique opportunity to say that this election is about more than Brexit. It might be what you're hearing from the Conservatives. Certainly Labour is trying to say that they do have a position on it, although it's still a bit unclear as to what it might be. This is an opportunity for the Lib Dems to come out and say, we also have domestic policy to worry about, like our NHS and like schools. And I think it's become very clear that Tim Farron is going to play that Brexit game. He's hoping to bring on those voters who are desperate to remain, who think that there still might be a way out of this. I think it's a very risky game, personally, because, I mean, this nation has been through referendum after general election now, and when you are proposing a second referendum on the Brexit vote, you are essentially saying that if people were to say, no, we don't like this deal, that everything could crumble, and I don't even think that staunch Remainers necessarily feel that way.
You don't think the 52-48 has solidified, that it's split in different ways? I mean, Sam, your take on Kate's point, is this a gamble here?
I don't think it's a gamble as such. I think what Tim was trying to do was reframe the debate. I think we've heard a lot from Theresa May over the last few weeks around how this general election and indeed the whole Brexit negotiation there's some inevitability around it, that it's going to be a Brexit at any costs, while the Conservatives are proposing to have a take it or leave it vote in Parliament about this, similar to the Labour Party. Tim's trying to put some clear blue water between the Liberal Democrats and those two parties by saying, look, this is a huge issue for the country. If people had the opportunity to vote on the ability for us to start this 2-year negotiation process, they should certainly have a chance to decide on whether they're going to accept the packet of measures and the future relationship we're going to have with the EU once it's decided in 2 years' time. So I don't think it is that sort of straight decision between Brexit or not. I think Tim's just trying to make a straight choice to say this should be a democratic
But he has
process.
identified, I mean, clearly, we've known this before the general election, he has identified the 48%, but isn't there a sense that 48% are not going to vote as a bloc? They came from all kinds of different parties, and many of them may have indeed changed their minds, or at least taken the view that the outcome of the referendum must be respected.
Indeed, you could probably sort of slice it and dice it whichever way you want, but clearly there's certain constituencies who voted very strongly one way or the other in the referendum, not least young people who came out overwhelmingly for Remain. So I actually think Tim's speech just now and the manifesto that they've launched today is a really unabashed pitch to young voters. I think there's plenty of stuff in the manifesto that speaks to them, not least allowances for job allowance, for greater ability to get funding for those sort of deprived students at university. I think there's a whole plethora of issues, and not least speaking to young people about Brexit who came out so strongly in favour of remaining, and I think he would hope to be connecting with people tonight. And,
do you think that? I mean, do you think this is a pitch for that? I mean, and they've got history, the Lib Dems, of course, with the young vote, the student vote when it comes to tuition fees. Do you think the issue of Brexit and the other issues, the other measures in there will help wash all that away?
Sure.
That'll be forgotten.
I think one of the biggest problems over the course of the coalition government is that freebies and handouts were still offered in large amounts, but mostly to older people, mostly to pensioners and people who on average are actually much more wealthy than young people. So even though there's all this talk of austerity, spending was actually cut very minimally, only 0.5% per annum per year over the coalition. But those spending cuts really came from people who were going to feel it, who were young, and often who were disadvantaged from disability benefit cuts and tuition fees. So I think in particular what we're seeing Tim Farron do is say, look, I'm not just going to hand out to the rich pensioners, I'm also going to hand out to young people. Now, I'm particularly concerned because this budget is not balanced. It would be increasing the debt.
Have you had time to crunch through it? Because, there's people have been forensically going through the Labour manifesto spending promises. What do you make of these?
Back of the envelope calculations, the IEA today is estimating that this would be an increase in $30 billion in that day-to-day spending that we speak about. Now, it's more managed than other manifestos that we've seen so far, and at least not all of it's coming directly from taxation. So the the economy in the medium term would probably not be damaged as badly, although of course in the long run this is taxes on our kids, so it's not a very ideal policy. But no, it's not a fully balanced budget.
But Tim Farron's always hoisted with his own petard on that, because he's more or less said, well, all that may not happen because all the money might not be coming in because of his estimate of the economic damage to the UK if there is a hard Brexit. So therefore, clearly, all those numbers would be out. Well, on his estimate.
Well, clearly, it's a difficult job predicting the future. I think, that like any party, they should welcome this forensic analysis of their spending plans, because I think, they want to be seen as a credible alternative and making sure that those numbers balance. I think they've put some credible proposals of where that money is going to come from, not least sort of putting off the cut in corporation, which was supposed to be been going down over the next few years. So I think they've come up with a credible set of proposals. They've put in also the proposal about how they're going to be paid for. Clearly, no one can predict the future. That they're going to hope that those numbers, when they are
borrowing at least $14 billion according to their own calculations, which is a shame coming from the Liberal Democrats, having been a part of a coalition which failed, but was at least trying to bring down that debt number. So I do think that's a shame, and I'm also deeply concerned that at a time where other nations are looking to lower their corporation tax, like the United States, this is not the time to be arguing for increases to corporation tax.
But and that leads into the other question, Sam Cunningham, that the Lib Dems always get asked, is who would you go into coalition with? Well, that leads them to the Labour Party, and therefore might deter even Remain Conservative voters who may have been thinking of voting Lib Dem on that message, because they think, hold on, you prop up Corbyn if he got anywhere close.
Well, I think they've been pretty clear, and Tim's been pretty clear, that there's no chance of a coalition this time round. I think, for one, Tim realises actually the damage it did to the party during those coalition years, and actually he'd be very keen to draw a line in the sand, and this is his opportunity to show people that there is a break from those coalition years, which did prove so disastrous.
But then people just go to that manifesto. Why did we bother listening to it? You're never going to be in power because you sure as heck aren't going to win 320 seats.
Sure, I guess kind of the main argument you would put against that is a sort of a fundamental argument about how you want this democracy to work. How do you want Parliament to work? You clearly don't want a one-party state and a Parliament which allows legislation to pass through its wood-panelled corridors without any examination or kind of amendment. So what Tim's pitch today is all about is saying, you can put your trust in me. We are a credible party with a credible set of policies, and let us be the credible opposition to the Conservative.
There was that thought going around, given parties being pulled to left and right, there's an opportunity down the centre. As yet, it's not coming through in the polling for the Lib Dems.
It hasn't come through. I actually saw, I think the most recent polls have their voting percentage down a little bit. But they are taking a gamble, and it's fascinating politically what's going to happen here, because either it's going to pay off and people who are A, centrist, and B, want the softest Brexit possible are going to vote Liberal Democrat, or they're going to see their percentage of the vote go down even further, which could be very bad. But they are putting themselves out there. They're being very strong in some of their positions. And just really quickly, I think we've overlooked some of the positions that I think free marketeers and maybe those who are a bit more state-centric can really agree upon. I'm thrilled to see that they're actually tackling issues like drug legalization. It might be a small issue, but no one else is talking about it. It's a very serious issue for mental health.
Yeah.
Yes, and so there are a few things to flag up that, are very Liberal Democrat about the manifesto.
Okay, well, listen, we're out of time, Kate Andrews, Sam Cunningham. Very good to see you, and I will be talking to the former business secretary in the coalition, of course, Savins Cable, after 8 o'clock.